Hello. Welcome to our next edition of our TinyTalk TED Talks. Really excited to have you here today. Hi, here's Ted. He's ready to talk. I think it's going to be me doing most of the talking. I'm Deb from TinyTalk Kent Downs. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Today's talk is all about signing with a newborn baby, and we're calling this From Womb to World. Our newborn classes run for babies who are up to 12 weeks old by the time the course starts. And lots of people say, well, why would you bother signing with a newborn? Like, they can't sign back. And that's kind of true to an extent, although newborn babies are absolutely amazing in terms of their capabilities, and we absolutely underestimate what they are capable of at a really young age. If you think about a tiny baby, when they are awake and ready to experience the world and the world around them, they have nothing else to do other than gaze around them and soak up the information that's given to them. Now, that might be sensory information from the world around them, different smells, different textures, different visual stimulus. Or it might be things that they see with their eyes, and in that respect it is parents using their hands to make some signs. And right from a really early age, babies are able to respond to the signs that parents make. So our classes have always been accessible for babies right from birth. Our main baby signing classes accommodate babies from all ages, from birth up to around 2 years of age. But we have developed our specific newborns programme because newborns are a special creature, and they do deserve specific attention. They have a really limited window of sensory receptiveness, so just a small amount of opportunity within their day when they're not tired, they're not hungry, they don't need a nappy change, when they are ready to play and engage with parents and caregivers around them. And so all of the work that parents do within that small window of opportunity, and that window will grow day on day, week on week, until your babies are much bigger and able to stay awake for a longer period of time. All the work that parents do within those first few weeks and months just bears fruit lots later on. So we always say with a newborn baby, use as many signs as you're able to within your day, but only actively teach them like a handful at a time and make it relevant to their environment. So we've had babies in classes, I'd say kind of 8 weeks, 10 weeks old, and this is kind of a regular occurrence now, that are able to make the signs for themselves because they've spent a long period of time watching their parents' hands and making the connection that, mummy does this, and then I get my milk. And because that happens all the time, day in, day out, several times a day, babies make that connection really quite soon. And eventually babies start to realise, I can do this too. And then when I do it, I get more milk. That's pretty much how signing works. So initially babies will get excited when they see their parents making a sign, particularly if it's quite a motivating sign for new babies. And we all know that milk is definitely one of those. That's why it's one of the earliest signs that we start with in our classes. Now, we use British Sign Language signs, and the official BSL sign for milk is like this. Now, that's way too complicated for tiny hands who are going to be using that sign so often. So it's the one sign that we modify, and we use this sign for milk for little babies. And if you think about what happens when your baby's feeding, whether or not they're breastfeeding or they're feeding with a bottle, you quite often see babies, if they're breastfeeding, kind of doing this against mum's skin, where they're stimulating the milk flow. And it's that action that we use for the sign. So there's a really close connection there already. Babies who use a bottle to feed, quite often if they're holding the bottle themselves, they will do this instinctively, that gesture. And so that's the sign that we've adopted for milk. It's a kind of an instinctive and natural gesture that babies pick up on really soon. So we've had loads of tiny babies using the milk sign for themselves, as I say, round about kind of 8-10 weeks. Another really good example of signing with a newborn are signs that they can feel as well. So signs that tap into other areas of their sensory experience. A good example of that is the Nappy Sign. Now, you can't see my nappy area, lucky you, so I'm going to do it on Ted. We just literally tap here, his nappy area. Nappy. And because obviously parents spend a lot of time changing nappies with newborns, and it's a sign that baby can feel on their bodies, it's one that they tend to pick up on and make that connection with really early. Now initially, babies will respond to parents making the sign. So as I said before, that could be getting excited. If you sign milk, your baby's going to get excited. You will see them brighten up, brighten faces, wider expressions, where they know, oh, she knows what I want. Yeah, I'd love some milk. Or if they're really upset and starving hungry, this is a great one for bottle feeders as well. Make the milk sign and you might see them calming down a little bit. If they're really crying, should we have some milk? It's coming, I'm making the milk. Then they start to kind of relax a little bit. Oh, she's understood me. I know, that's what I need. And they start to chill out a little bit. Another great example is our pick up sign. It's a natural instinctive gesture that tiny babies will do in response to parents doing the sign as well. So when you come to pick up your baby, pick you up, make the sign, say the word, and eventually your baby will start to raise their hands as well in response to you doing the gesture when you come in the room or when you go to pick them up after a sleep. I've had loads of successes in our classes with really tiny babies using those signs. The whole point of it though really is that it can really deepen the bond between you. It's a really tricky time having a newborn baby and loads of hormones whooshing around the body for parents as much as for babies, and I don't just mean mum, same goes for dad as well. The stress hormone cortisol is a major player in newborn relationships, and the more that babies cry and the less sleep that parents have had, the more the stress hormone kind of gets in there and kind of makes everything a bit tense. But if your baby's understanding you a lot better and you're understanding them, and signs play a huge part in that, it can really reduce the crying. I signed with both of my babies right from newborn, and I actually don't know what I would have done without it. I'm not really sure how people parent without signs, because it does give you such a lovely insight into what they need, what they find interesting, and as a tiny baby, it definitely leads to less crying and therefore less stress. And everyone needs that when you're dealing with the challenges of a newborn baby. As I said before, babies kind of just soak up information at this age. We absolutely underestimate what they're capable of. Their tiny brains go through so many changes in the first few weeks and months. Developmental changes, emotional changes, physiological changes, so many synapse connections going on between brain and body at that age. And it's a lovely thing to be able to do, to add in elements of communication in that. Your baby is born hearing everything. Their sense of hearing is really quite highly developed when they're born, and they will take in all the information that they hear around you and that they see and that they smell. You know, it's a full body kind of sensory experience being a tiny baby. But in terms of what comes out, it's repeated things. So the more that you sign at home with a tiny baby, the quicker their chances are of picking up on these signs. And that's another reason why we wanted to develop our newborn classes. Maternity leave is really short, isn't it? And by the time your little one, you know, if lots of people are saying, oh, we'll wait till 6 months and then we'll do that, because at that point, you know, they can clap and, you know, they'll get more use out of their hands. I understand that point of view, but by that time half your maternity leave's gone, maybe even more, and you've got a really limited window there of opportunity to develop your little one's communication experience a lot further. So if you can start even sooner, all the better. It's a lovely thing to be able to do to get an insight into your baby's life. Our newborn classes talk loads and loads about the journey that babies go through from the womb to being out in the world. We give you loads and loads of ideas about how to support them in terms of their sensory development. Lots of ideas that you can try at home, lots of ways in which you can be empathetic to the journey that they've taken and the challenges that they're facing as a new human. Lots of ways in which you can help them adjust to the challenges of being out in the world, from being tucked up in the womb with all of their needs met. And signing does play a huge part in that. We only cover a few basic signs each week within our newborn course, which is a 6-week programme. and that leads babies on to a natural curiosity, and usually parents too. We want to learn more. What's the sign for this? I've got that in a storybook. How do I sign that? How do I relay that information to my child? And all of our parents, without fail, would attest to the fact that they've got a much deeper understanding of their baby's interests and needs and wishes from using signs. If you think about your baby's newborn period, it goes in a flash. And it almost feels like a wasted opportunity not to have spent that time learning about them and them learning about their new world. And signing can really help you guys do that. So do tune in later in the week. We're going to be talking about stepping stones to speech, which is a bit of a tongue twister. So signing with toddlers, that happens tomorrow. And a bit later on, using signs as part of a multilingual family. And then why choose TinyTalk? Loads of different ways in which you can learn about what we do. All of the videos are going to be stored on our YouTube channel as well as on the Facebook event page here. So huge thank you for listening today. If you have got any questions, then just ping them in the comments field here, or you can message the page at TinyTalk Kent Downs. We've got a new newborn communication workshop starting next Monday on the 13th of July, and they tend to happen every term as well. So if your little one isn't arrived yet, then we've got another one starting in September. If they're a bit bigger and they're already past the 12-week mark, don't feel like you've left it too late though. Babies are ready to learn at any stage in their development, and that goes for children of all ages really. So if you're kind of thinking, yeah, this sounds cool, let's give it a go, just get in touch and we can get you a place in one of our classes. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good evening.